Trey Yanks, too, is live in Tel Aviv with the very latest on the war with Iran. Hi, Trey.
Todd, Carly, good morning. Iran has indicated they are laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz. Reports indicate, though, there are less than 10 of these sea mines placed already.
Breaking news, the United States military has just carried out a decisive strike against one of Iran's most dangerous and calculated moves of this entire war. Iran had begun laying sea mines inside the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most critical choke points in the entire global economy, responsible for the passage of 20% of the world's oil supply. A waterway so strategically vital that disrupting it would send shockwaves through every economy on Earth, spiking energy prices, threatening global shipping, and cutting off oil flows to dozens of nations simultaneously. Iran knew exactly what it was doing. This was not a military maneuver. This was economic warfare, a direct attempt to hold the world's oil supply hostage. The United States responded immediately and with overwhelming force. U.S. Central Command struck and destroyed 16 Iranian mine-laying vessels, 16 ships eliminated. The threat to the strait neutralized before it could fully materialize. And President Trump made clear in a statement on Truth Social that any further attempt to mine those waters will be met with military consequences, the likes of which have never been seen before. Meanwhile, Israel is intensifying its campaign on every front. New airstrikes on Hezbollah in southern Beirut, a massive Israeli military brigade being repositioned to the northern border in preparation for offensive ground action, and Iran, despite losing 90% of its ballistic missile capability, continuing to fire cluster munitions at Israeli cities, killing civilians and testing the limits of the world's most sophisticated air defense system. This war is escalating, and tonight we have the full breakdown. I'm Hannah Blake. This is Global News Diary. Let's get into it. To understand why the mining of the Strait of Hormuz is one of the most alarming developments of this entire conflict, you need to understand what that waterway actually represents. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow passage of water located between Iran and the Arabian Peninsula. At its narrowest point, just 21 miles wide. Through that 21-mile corridor, approximately 20% of all the oil traded globally passes every single day. Saudi oil, Emirati oil, Kuwaiti oil, Iraqi oil, Qatari liquefied natural gas, all of it moves through the Strait of Hormuz on its way to markets in Asia, Europe, and beyond. For decades, Iran has understood that its ability to threaten that choke point was its single most powerful economic weapon. Iranian military doctrine has long referred to the potential closure of the strait as an ace in the hole, a last resort option that could inflict catastrophic economic damage on the United States, its allies, and the entire global trading system without Iran ever having to win a single conventional military engagement. Iran just tried to play that ace. Reports confirmed that Iran had already begun placing sea mines in the strait, with fewer than 10 mines placed at the time the operation was discovered. But the intent was clear. This was the beginning of a systematic mining campaign designed to make the strait impassable for commercial tankers and to force the United States and its allies into a costly and dangerous countermine operation while the broader war continued. The United States did not wait for the campaign to develop. U.S. Central Command moved immediately, striking 16 Iranian mine-laying vessels, the ships being used to deploy the mines, and destroying them before they could continue the operation. In a single precise military action, the United States eliminated the platform for the threat before the threat could fully materialize. President Trump followed the military action with a direct public warning posted on Truth Social. The message was unambiguous. If any mines are placed in the Strait of Hormuz, the military response will be unlike anything previously seen. And in a follow-up, Trump acknowledged that if Iran removes whatever mines may have already been placed, that would be considered a step in the right direction. The carrot and the stick, both delivered simultaneously, both with absolute clarity. The destruction of those 16 mine-laying vessels was not just a tactical military success. It was a strategic statement about who controls the Strait of Hormuz and who controls the flow of the world's energy supply. Former NSC Chief of Staff Alex Gray, speaking on the broader strategic picture, put it plainly, the United States Navy has been trained specifically for this scenario for decades. Countermine operations in the Strait of Hormuz are not a new challenge. They are not an unexpected problem. The last time the Strait became a live conflict zone in this way was during the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, when mines became a serious threat to international maritime traffic in exactly this region. The U.S. Navy studied that conflict. It trained for its recurrence. It built the capacity to respond. That capacity is now being deployed. In a demonstration of naval dominance that sent an unmistakable message to Tehran, U.S. Navy warships successfully escorted commercial oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz, guiding them safely through the contested waters while Iranian forces watched from a position of degraded capability and growing desperation. Alex Gray described what the United States is demonstrating right now as naval mastery in the most critical choke point in the region. That is not an overstatement. It is a precise description of the strategic reality. Iran threatened to close the strait. The United States opened it, guarded it, and escorted civilian shipping through it in full view of the world. The implications extend far beyond this specific conflict. Every nation that relies on Gulf oil exports, China, Japan, South Korea, India, the entire European Union, is watching what the United States is doing in the Strait of Hormuz right now. And what they are seeing is an American military that is not only willing to fight, but capable of protecting the global economic infrastructure that every major economy depends on. Iran's ace in the hole just got pulled from the deck. Even as Iran's conventional military capabilities continue to be decimated by American and Israeli strikes, Tehran is escalating its use of one of the most dangerous weapons in its arsenal, cluster munitions. A standard ballistic missile is a single object with a single trajectory, one that Israel's layered air defense system comprising the Arrow 2, Arrow 3, David Sling, and Iron Dome is highly effective at intercepting. But a cluster munition is different. It is a ballistic missile that breaks apart at high altitude, releasing dozens of smaller bomblets following independent trajectories toward the ground. Instead of one target, the air defense system must simultaneously engage a dispersed cloud of smaller, faster-moving munitions. No air defense system in the world has fully solved that problem. The consequences are real and deadly. A single Iranian ballistic missile carrying cluster munitions slammed directly into an apartment building in Israel. 2 people were killed in one attack alone. Iranian-made cluster munitions have now caused more Israeli casualties than any other type of attack in this conflict. These weapons are banned under international law. Iran does not care, and it is increasing their use precisely because they are harder to stop. On the northern front, the IDF confirmed that Hezbollah is simultaneously attempting to ramp up rocket fire toward northern Israeli communities. The Israeli military says it is responding by deepening pressure on the organization and that Hezbollah is taking heavy blows. A full Israeli military brigade is now being repositioned to the northern border in preparation for potential offensive ground action into Lebanon. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the nation and the world with a statement that laid out Israel's understanding of this war with characteristic directness. Netanyahu described the conflict as a campaign against what he called a cruel enemy, one that, in his words, wants to destroy Israel entirely. He spoke about Operation Rising Lion, an earlier phase of Israel's campaign against Iran's ballistic missile infrastructure, and pointed to its success in degrading Iranian long-range strike capabilities. But he also acknowledged something important. Iran did not simply accept that degradation. When Israel destroyed Iran's ballistic missile capabilities in Operation Rising Lion, the Iranian regime did not pursue diplomacy. It did not seek a negotiated off-ramp. Instead, it began rebuilding. It attempted to redevelop its ballistic missile program and, critically, to bury the new systems deep underground in hardened facilities designed to survive the kind of airstrikes that had destroyed the previous generation of weapons. That detail matters. It tells us something fundamental about the Iranian regime's strategic mindset. Even after suffering devastating military losses, the regime's response was not to recalibrate. It was to go deeper underground and try again. Netanyahu's message was clear. Israel understands this about its enemy, and Israel will not stop until the threat is eliminated, not degraded, not managed, not reduced to an acceptable level. Eliminated. The Israeli military is now repositioning a full military brigade to the northern border, the border with Lebanon, in preparation for what Israeli media is describing as potential offensive ground action. This is not a defensive repositioning. This is preparation for an advance. The IDF is signaling that if Hezbollah continues to escalate its rocket fire from southern Lebanon, Israel is prepared to take the fight across the border on the ground. There is a piece of this conflict that has received relatively little attention in mainstream coverage, but that military analysts and geopolitical strategists consider potentially decisive for the outcome of the war. It is called Kharg Island. Kharg Island is a small island in the Persian Gulf, roughly 1/3 the size of Manhattan, located off the southwestern coast of Iran. It does not look like much on a map, but what happens on Kharg Island determines the financial survival of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Approximately 90% of all Iranian crude oil exports pass through the facilities on Kharg Island. Every barrel of oil that Iran sells to fund its military, pay its government workers, subsidize its proxies, and keep basic services functioning for its population moves through this tiny island. It is Iran's economic lifeline, the single most critical piece of infrastructure in the entire country, more important to the regime's survival than any missile battery or naval base or air force installation. Taking Kharg Island or destroying its oil export infrastructure would not just hurt Iran economically, it would gut the regime's budget, it would eliminate the funding that flows to Hezbollah, it would cut the money that pays IRGC soldiers, it would collapse the economic foundation that allows the Islamic Republic to function as a state. Alex Gray was direct about the strategic significance. U.S. and Israeli military planners are fully aware of Kharg Island. They know what it represents. They know what it would mean to neutralize it. And they know what military assets would need to be brought to bear to do so. President Trump is reportedly considering a full range of escalation options, from continued strikes on military infrastructure at the lower end of the escalatory ladder, all the way up to options like Kharg Island at the higher end. The question, according to Gray, is what Iran is willing to offer in terms of de-escalation in exchange for those options staying off the table. This is the leverage game being played right now at the highest levels of American strategic decision-making. Every strike the U.S. and Israel carry out is not just a military action. It is a data point in a negotiation, a demonstration of capability and will designed to convince Iranian leadership that continuing to fight is more costly than finding a way out. So far, Iran's new supreme leader, Moshtaba Khamenei, who remains in hiding and has yet to make a public appearance, has not signaled any willingness to engage. Iran's foreign minister has ruled out talks with the United States, and the IRGC is still laying mines, still firing cluster munitions, still trying to play the Strait of Hormuz card. Kharg Island may be where this war ultimately ends, one way or another. Here is today's question, and it is one of the most strategically significant questions of this entire conflict. The United States just destroyed 16 Iranian mine-laying ships and is escorting oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is still firing cluster munitions at Israeli cities. With Kharg Island potentially on the table as the next major escalation, do you think Iran will find a path to de-escalation before this war reaches that point? Or does this only end when Iran has nothing left to fight with? Drop your answer in the comments below. This community consistently produces the most informed analysis anywhere on this platform. The best responses get featured in our next video. If this breakdown gave you the full strategic picture that most coverage is missing, hit that like button right now. 2 seconds. That is all it takes to help this channel reach people who deserve to understand what is actually happening. Subscribe if you are not already part of this community. We cover every major development in this conflict and in the world with the depth, context, and analysis that the story demands. Turn on notifications. This war is moving fast. Developments are breaking by the hour. You do not want to be behind when the next major escalation hits. And share this video. Send it to someone who is watching the news and feeling like they are only getting half the story. This is the other half. I'm Hannah Blake. This is Global News Diary. We will be back the moment this story develops further. Stay sharp, stay informed.